just waiting for it to turn 6 o'clock so we can call our meeting to order.
So this is called wait time. Makes everyone uncomfortable.
This is for the people who are logging in and they're like, this is when the best questions are asked. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. And our first item is to move into executive session. Can I have a motion, please? Motion. Oh, executive session for the purposes of personnel. Yes, because we have to say that. Okay, Jim, second. Chuck, second. All in favor? Opposed? And that motion carries. We are going to move into executive session, and we will be back at 6:30 for our work session. welcome back, everyone. We're moving on to item number 3, our work session for our development of board goals. So this was something that we normally do during our summer session, or during the summer planning workshop, but we ran out of time, and so we decided to move it to our work session for today. And so if we can take a look at what our goals from last year were and work through and come up with our goals for this year. Let's start with number 1. Goal number 1 last year was to support the superintendent in his accountability of implementing and achieving the district goals and his superintendent goals by continuing to do our district planning conference, by monitoring the implementation of the strategic plan, by providing quality feedback to our superintendent in a timely manner, and to gain proficiency in super eval. How did we do on those goals?
As it's written,
Microphone.
sorry. As it's written, we did do the district planning committee. Every board meeting, we went over the strategic plan. We did have communicated back to the superintendent, and we continue to super eval. So as this one's written, I think we accomplished all that. But with goals in general, I think there needs to be a little bit more like meat on the skeleton with them. Exactly what are we looking for? Like, you know, if we're monitoring the strategic plan, well, what are we monitoring and what are we looking for that to produce?
Other thoughts? But is this a goal that we want to maintain as a stated goal, or is this one something we could make a goal that does something with the strategic plan specifically and move the rest of this to, we're doing this, let's just maintain doing what we're doing?
I think the objectives need to be maybe a little bit more specific.
Okay.
Smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. This was probably around the strategic plan and providing feedback to the superintendent. I think super eval, we all know how to get around in that now, maybe for next year. And then,
I think we did a better job with it this year.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And if I may, as you talk about the super eval, the last goal, last objective is proficiency in board eval. And one of the reasons for the board eval is to see areas that you're weak in, that you want to develop goals about. So that might be something too, as part of the discussion, you say, well, go back and reflect on the board evaluation, how you evaluate yourself. So if here are areas, you know, if you're dropping goal 1 or possibly doing it, here's something you want to pick up in place of it with a smart objective along with it.
I like that we have a goal that incorporates our relationship with our superintendent. I think it's important that we continue striving to have a positive relationship with the superintendent, no matter who the superintendent is. So I like to see that as part of, you know, what we're discussing. Where are we in that relationship? What are we doing to continue fostering a positive relationship? How are we managing difficult conversations when they need to be had, and that sort of thing. So I'd like to see goal 1 still be goal 1, but agree that we need to do something a little meatier with the objectives. Does anybody have any suggestions on how we can rework these, how we could word them?
I would think at least the monitor of the strategic plan, the implementation of the strategic plan, it has to be that, you know, by January 2024, we'd like to see this and this in place. An example of that would be with the text messages, you know, that part of the communication got accomplished last year. But it wasn't, we didn't say we wanted to see by March or April, you know, the superintendent got it done. But I think all those things, we can say, we want this done, we'd like to see this done by this time or information of, you know, this, what topic would be in there.
So one of the things that we still need is the feedback from the survey that we did towards the end of the school year. We haven't seen that yet, have we?
You received that at the district planning conference.
Yeah.
We got all that.
Okay.
I would say, just to
send it
kind
to
of
We'll
insert,
get the district clerk to send it to you. Yeah. And we're glad to have you healthy and back.
You do have it.
I'm thinking back, go ahead.
yeah, just to support kind of goal one, I fully agree and support that we want to have that, relationship with the superintendent and be able to identify goals. I think we want to try to establish some metrics or milestones at which, within the strategic plan, we want to hit X at what quarter, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a date in a week. It has to be maybe by quarter of where we want to hit some strategic milestones. And I think when I look at the objective number 3, quality feedback, some sort of time range or some sort of reasonable metric of saying, okay, what would that look like if you chose to keep that in there? I would prefer to have maybe more strategic metrics and maybe less objectives that can encompass that, right? So
Okay.
when you're looking at the strategic plan truly actually is monitoring and feedback and all those pieces. So I think if we could wrap our arms around what those milestones would be and then be able to keep that as a goal, that would then help and sort of govern how you're doing and how effectively it's being communicated.
So going back to the key things that came out of that survey that I am apparently blanking on, what were the things that would create, what are the things that we need to look at for creating milestones? What milestones do we want to see?
Well, and I think that's where you have to be careful, because you looked at the survey in entirety. That's where the strategic plan came into place, and it has already selected the key aspects that are out of it.
Okay.
And then also, I think if I reflect back on the feedback I got on my evaluation and the goals going forward, I don't remember in my goals, I'd have to go back and look, any of my goals being directly related to the strategic plan.
Right.
So in order for it all to be aligned, the board has its goals, and in this section has measurable for me, that should be in my goals for my evaluation, rather than some of the other ones that are in there.
Yep.
Unless you just make so many that they're impossible to accomplish.
Well, and I would agree. In looking through that document, there was a few Excel files with a lot of information, right? So to distill that down and to come up with right here, 1 or 2, I'm not prepared to do that. However, it is something that can be done, and I do agree it has to be tied to your personal goals and also the strategic plan, because that's ultimately.
Yeah, because you weren't on the board at the time, and that's exactly what happened. All that information was distilled down to all these questions. Here's what we want to focus on, those 3 things. So if we feel we've accomplished them, then I would think you go back and pull all the data again and say, what new one do we want? But if you haven't accomplished them, did a new one arise to become more important than one's there? But if you keep changing your goals each year, how do you make sure what you've implemented is viable and able to stay for a long period of time?
Right.
I mean, under that track, I would say something very simply like, from the survey, monitor, implement, like what the top 3 concerns were. And then we'll have, discussion with the superintendent and, like you said, the first quarter, and again in the third quarter, at the end of the first quarter.
My contract actually says twice a year you do that. You have my mid-year evaluation, my final evaluation. So it would be,
in response to just these goals. Do you mean?
second quarter and the fourth quarter
Right.
of a school, not a calendar fiscal year, but of the school year. So it'd be end of the first semester, end of the second semester.
Right.
So when we meet with our superintendent at the end of the second quarter and the fourth quarter, we are going to have something specific where we're talking about strategic plan. Does it need to say in our objective what that is? Or are we changing this to, rather than monitor the implementation, it's now going to say meet with and discuss?
Well, I think like one of them, for me personally, like under there for like objectives that would be measurable is from the facilities came the report and the board directly asked for, I don't want to say a scale model, the words are escaping me now, of transportation building. Because there's a long discussion on types of buses, where it has to go. And even if we don't go down that way with different types of buses, just the condition of the bus garage itself. No matter what, something has to be done. So we want, the board, I interpret as wanted something from that, period. The other one that came to my mind was with communication. This year, we wanted to have the app up and running, which Mary Jo was going to present on too with that.
Okay. Well, so you're talking about the app, the bus garage. Is there something for student experience that we can focus on this year?
That's, by all means, students are the most important thing, and that's why I was trying to remember if there was any focus that came out of that at the planning conference, and off the top of my head, there really wasn't. You know, and I'd want to go back and review the strategic plan to see what things in student experience. I know we've been working on clubs and things like that, and we did implement more clubs last year. Maybe student experience, we would want something with a successful completion of implementing a new mascot. I think that would be a great student experience to have a great transition there. For what it's worth, I think that's a very important aspect.
And
Grab his,
Yeah.
sorry, I thought you had a mic down there.
That's all right. The work that we've been doing this past summer with our MTSS and getting our student support team and administrators up to date and up to speed on trauma-informed care, restorative justice practices, and that's going to continue on throughout this year. So we're continually always looking for updating our MTSS program, but those are some things that would fit into the strategic plan on that goal.
And thinking too, the board said they wanted to make sure they're getting feedback about our school resource program, and they will be implementing ARS system, anonymous reporting system. So that could be another one that's in there, because that would have to do with bullying and dangers to students, which is student experience, taking care of each other and making sure they're comfortable coming to school.
And Jane, and I think that these goals in the document we have is important. I almost think that whether it's in September, that we should almost do another, just another work session, just covering this, because we're not going to do it justice in 9 minutes.
No, definitely are not.
Thank you, I was thinking the same thing.
Not that anyone wants to meet more, but I really think we should do that, and then maybe, I just looked for real quickly, that whole survey that we looked at during the conference, could be sent out again. Okay, just to see it again, and then, so we can look at it and then come back. I'm just totally making this up. Because another date where the board could just have an hour
Yeah.
of discussing just this.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Okay,
I'm also going to have Nora send out a copy of the strategic plan to everyone, because now you can see what was pulled out of it already, as these are the important areas and the objectives under those. So, heard more time on this. Would you want to do an hour before the next board meeting, or a whole different day?
And we all got to look at calendars and we can get back. I would say a whole nother day, just because, I think it's done right. It's going to be a lot of time and thought. And I don't know if you want to.
Just do a work session.
Yeah, just do a work session and then run right into a board meeting. Because if it takes a half hour, awesome. If it takes an hour and 15 minutes, is what it is. I just don't want to just check the box and move on.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I would say at that point too, then reflect on what are my goals to parallel the board's goals would be important. And I can work on that with the president and vice president, because that's typically how that's done. So Nora will get out, she'll find some dates, put them out, and see who's available for the most dates, as we've done always before.
Perfect. I like that.
Separate from the board meeting, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything else in in the document that you see now that you immediately say, okay, this is another area I'd like everybody to think about between now and that next work session? Is there a particular area that sticks out?
The only thing I would add with goal 3, it strive to be a highly functioning cooperative school board. You know, think for each of us what that really means and how we interpret that. So we can just, if we're going to keep that, so we can discuss it.
And I would think goal 3, the second bullet, that was for a very specific reason. To make sure board members were staying their lines, that might be something you don't need at this point. For, you know, as a compliment to the board right here as where you are right now and how you're functioning. I'm not to say in the future it wouldn't be neat to have an outside person come in, but at the school board development programs, they have those conversations. So if you wanted to be updated at one, you could, but I don't see the board as a whole needing that at this time. But again, it's your goals, your decisions.
In which case, then think about if there was another goal that's not on here that you think we should be discussing.
And then I would say also for the last goal, the proficiency of the board eval, where are you guys with it? If everyone's comfortable with it, why do you need it? You know.
Jane, I think too, for the refining the description on the ambassador program and setting some SMART goals around what the expectations are for board members for the ambassador program.
And that's been a goal in previous years, if I
Yeah.
remember right.
Because we have a page that indicates what we should be doing, but maybe just reviewing it to understand our lane in that space and what the expectations are.
Because I remember there used to be a goal of how many, to attend so many during the year.
Yep.
You know, functions or events or meetings, whatever, or visiting the building even.
Okay. That's good. All right. That gives us 4 minutes. Anything else?
4 minutes.
You could take a break for 4 minutes and say hi to our guests.
Yep.
Because we have some, yay!
Yeah. All right. 4 minutes. We'll resume at 7 o'clock.
And if anyone's going to speak, the forms to fill out
All right, folks. And welcome back. Welcome to all who have come to observe the meeting of the Iroquois Central School District's Board of Education. There are 2 periods of recognition of guests listed on the meeting agenda. The first is for comments regarding agenda items, and the second is for topics not on our agenda tonight. Speakers may offer comments related to school operations and programs, but the board cannot hear personnel complaints against any individual associated with the school system. Please address these concerns to the appropriate administrator. If you wish to be recognized, please fill out the appropriate form and turn it in to our district clerk. As per policy 1514, public participation at board meetings, public comment by district residents is limited to 15 minutes total unless the board suspends this limit. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Additionally, no more than 3 people may speak on a single topic unless the board also waives this limitation. I lost my spot. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting, which means we will not be engaging in dialogue with you this evening. District personnel will follow up with your in regards to your concerns. Please rest assured that we are listening carefully and take seriously what you have to say. Please demonstrate respect by speaking to the issues, sharing your ideas and opinions, but not engaging in personal attacks. The board appreciates your willingness to share your concerns and your celebrations this evening. Please be advised that the meeting is being live streamed and the recording is posted on the Iroquois website. And with that, I'd ask for us to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And that brings us to board discussion and news worth sharing. The first item is to have a couple of recognitions. So if I could call Mrs. Armovich and Mrs. Lewandowski up so we can recognize them for their work to ensure that our payroll was complete and accurate during the transition to her BOCES program. It was not a smooth transition, and without these 2 ladies, some people might not have gotten paid. So that deserves lots of extra recognition.
And I don't know. Yeah, I'll get over there and take a picture, but I don't know if John or Dave, where's Dave? They're right next to each other. Want to say, don't go walk away. I'll come over and take a picture with you. But Karen was only here a week, just so everyone knows. We really value taking care of the staff here at Iroquois, and one way is to do this is just to pay them appropriately and on time. And Karen was here a week. Sue's been here a little longer, but it has nothing to do with her role, and both of them stepped in for countless hours, struggling, working on it, reviewing, checking, contacting people personally, running extra checks, not extra checks for more money, but extra checks for the right amount of money to make sure that people got what they had paid. I can't begin to say it, and they did that too when unfortunately some key administrators were not around. And so they took it on themselves and just led the way, and that's a true initiative. And you know, we like to say we care about each other at Iroquois, and you guys really demonstrated that of making Iroquois what it is as a special place by doing the special effort. And I know you're still working on it and cleaning up what not our organization did, but another organization did, which why we're making changes in this board meeting to you know, do it. So you know, despite board awards or anything we could do for you, you know, the whole district should be thanking you, because I know I wouldn't be eating right now if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much.
That's a good one. Yeah. As long as there's.
And it's a special award. You can stay there whole meeting and hear everything.
Okay. The next item is our ECASB update. I would like to recognize we have the Executive Director, David Lowry, is here, along with the, what is your official title? I always forget.
Make sure Dave does the right
Our
thing.
Executive Assistant and Information Specialist. Yeah, okay, it's a mouthful. Sue Summers are both here from ECASB. Do you guys have anything you'd like to say today? Would you like to be heard? Yes.
Could someone pass him a mic, please?
We've had a busy and successful year so far. We've had our board and brews back in July. We had our back-to-school dinner with Apogee, and we talked about school branding last week, I believe.
Thursday.
And our next program, other than the team meetings, which will be coming up all during the month of September, will be October 12th with Rick Timms, and that will be at the Collins Restaurant, and that information was sent out this week. And I just wish everyone a successful year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for, you did get,
I would just like to congratulate Dave on becoming our new Area 1 Director for NISBA.
We did get information from ECASB today. You've got the cards with all of the dates for all of the things that are happening this year. If you will take a moment to add the items that you are the committee person for to your calendar, I would appreciate it. And make sure that you come back with interesting things to share with the board. NISBA update. So Chuck stole the thunder. We do have the Area 1 Director is retiring at the end of this calendar year, and David is going to be taking over as the Area 1 Director for NISBA, which gives us, one more voice over there in Albany. And I had the opportunity to spend some time there this past summer doing a leadership conference, and I have been involved in a couple of different meetings. We had the law conference at the beginning of August, and I was able to sit down with one of the director, I think it's the director of membership services, so if there's anything that we need from NISBA, he has offered his support. So if you're interested in having any kind of NISBA programming or whatnot, we do now have a really strong connection there. So that's NISBA. Does anybody else have something that they would like to discuss today?
I think it's October 12th, the Rick Timms program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to it again this year, and hopefully, because it's a lot of material, so we all should be there for reviewing. It's a very informative session, and it's very detailed. And I learn something new every year that I didn't pick up from previous years, so highly recommend everyone attend that.
Yeah, it's one that you do have to attend multiple times because there is so much material. And what is going to be interesting this time is the formula that the state's supposed to follow. They're stating it's fully funded. So where do they go from here? Because that was one of the things they were trying to accomplish. So it'll be interesting to hear. And the state talks about trying to change the formula. So it'll be interesting to hear if he has any inside information on that. And that's for the main money that we get from the state. So we're talking millions.
Does anybody else have something they would like to discuss? Have you been to school hasn't started yet, so I doubt anybody's got an ambassador report at this point, right? But now's a good time to remind you that as an ambassador, one of your goals should be to visit the building sometime early in the school year, visit with the principal, maybe attend a faculty meeting or something like that. So now's a good time to reach out to the building administrator and remind them that you're the ambassador and start making those connections.
And if you are an ambassador to the buildings and grounds, be sure to thank them for all the work they did over the summer. They've done an excellent job with everything. As always, I mean, it's, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, it's the same it's always been, which is excellent. And that's hard to recognize until you go to other schools and see what happens there.
We just had an extreme bee problem at this back door, and they took care of it in
Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah, and that's it, that, you know, that with, in this case, bees, it's an extreme problem, and they show up right away, they drop what they're doing, but then they go right back and finish everything else.
Last call for anything under board discussion and news worth sharing. Okay, then we're going to turn it over to the superintendent for his report.
All right, I guess I'll go right here from where I'm sitting. I have a presentation, and with this presentation, and I'll have a guest speaker, Carrie Vetter is going to help me towards the end, our athletic director. And we are going to be changing our mascot, if everyone remembers. That's something that came down from the state. We don't have a choice of regulations they put forth. So this is what I'm going to present opening day. Yes, I know you told me turn it on, and I forgot. I just turned it on. And for the clicker. And so what I'm going to be doing opening day, so the staff knows this, is going to be posted on the website. I've changed the view of it from what you saw at the district planning conference. So I'm going to talk about non-negotiable committee charges and actions by the month. So therefore, that's how I'm going to put it online, is so people can see what's happening each month rather than by topic. Non-negotiables, there they are. They're self-explanatory. I went into a little more detail in here because I moved some aspects of when I presented to you into here. For example, voting will be electronic. I put in here that this is how we're going to do it because it presented to the board and the board agreed. That's where we'd be using like not teams. Mary Jo, what's the name of it again? Forms, thank you. Forms to do this. And we will be going through it using IP address to make sure people aren't voting multiple times. Mascot logo selection shall be separate votes. You'll see that in the timelines. Appropriate logo design is a single design. I was reviewing this with a teacher today to get feedback, and she said, well, what do you mean by single design? And she gave her perspective. I said, no, this is the picture. This is the way it looks. So it doesn't matter what team you're on. This is the way it looks, whether it's a school bought or a personal bought by a boosters club. This is what it looks like for uniformity. So I'll use dragons as an example and say our dragon is, fire breathing, some with a claw, and your track, and you want to make it a flying dragon. No, it is a claw with a mouth with fire breathing. By no means am I trying to make dragon our symbol either. That's just the best example I could give of that. Well, sea slug, I couldn't come up with two pictures of a sea slug, so I had to switch to something else. For those of you watching at home, sea slug is what I commonly refer to when I talk about mascot, because I fully believe no one will pick sea slug. Now when people start knowing that's what I've been saying, I'm scared that someone's going to put in a recommendation for a sea slug for the mascot. Because people are saying that to me now. Committee charges. So what will the committee be doing? And when we have a meeting with the committee, you'll see where to go over the charges to make sure people know why they're on the committee. And so they're going to review all the submissions. They're going to look at however many 10 to 10,000 submissions. They're going to ensure they meet all the non-negotiables. They're all applied in there. And they're going to group like similar things. So they're going to decide is ocean sea slug the same as a freshwater sea slug, or is that two separate categories? So they put them together as just sea slug. And from all the submissions, they're going to pick the top 25. And that's their charge. So in September, this is where you get out the information. So everyone know they can get on the committee. I'm going to meet with the committee towards the end of September to say, here are your charges. So if you're on it, you know why you're on there. And someone, say, well, I thought I was picking the mascot. No, you're making sure what the voting is appropriate. Then in October.
Doug?
Yes.
Have we got, there was a message that said if you're interested in becoming
20
being a member on the
some, I want to say already.
There's 20 people so far?
There's about 25, 26
people
Okay.
already have put in for it. I'll be presenting to the teachers, so there might be some more teachers. They do get my messages, but they might go, oh yeah, I was thinking about that, I forgot to put it in. So this is what we're going to look for in September. We'll probably put it out again in some more of my messages, just to make sure no one's missed it from being on vacation. I don't think, you know, because if you look at, there's, you know, a lot of people on it, you can break into small groups, they all get sections and they come together. So there's ways of working with larger groups on this. And then people drop off too, time commitments, they might not be able to make it. So then in October, this is where we'll receive submissions. We'll have a form by that time. That'll be online. We're gonna get QR codes with it. I'll put those out through messages, get them in the newspaper, website, so they're all out there, every place we could think of to have that where people can submit it. We already have people that have sent in ideas through emails. We're gonna put those in there. So just because you don't use the form doesn't mean we're gonna exclude you. We wanna be inclusive in this process. Then here, I start to put dates in here because here's where November is, where the committee will pick the top 25. We'll present those. There'll be a time period where, again, they're advertised, put out there, people, so they can think about it, because I think this is one of the most important things. And we're only looking at the mascot now, not the logo, because how can you pick a logo until you know what the mascot is? I don't want for every idea for a mascot, if it is a sea slug, 50 pictures of a sea slug, because then how do you narrow those down? Let's wait till we know what the mascot is and then just focus on that. And then in December will be the voting. The first vote will be get the top 5. Second vote will be get the top 1, which for beginning of January, students come back from break. We can put out a reminder in the Monday message. I believe that's like the 4th. And by the 5th, we'll be able to say, here's what it is, and we can get that information out. And if I timed it right, we should be able to hit all the newspapers and everything at that point, so it's communicated to the whole community in a relatively short period of time. January with the mascot, that's the 8th is where the information will be out for the final selection. Then we start looking at the logo. Now that we know what the selection is, we'll start getting ideas for that. Draw your ideas. Here's what it is. Notice they have a 9th to the 31st, a longer time in there, because they could work on it in art classes, get help from the art teachers. You might have an artist in the community that has some good ideas. And then we'll have those all submitted through a form. Again, we'll do the same thing with the QR codes and advertisement in the newspapers, Monday messages. Then we move into February, where the committee will review them. And they'll get the top 25, they'll be voted on to get the top 5. The top 5 will be voted on. And on the March 26th, everyone will be informed of the final selection. We'll have the name and the final selection. And this is the point where, I look at Carrie, and you better be able to run at that point, which is kind of what she, and by run I don't mean physically, but get moving, because at that point, and throughout this, we're going to need help with the committee of making sure of copyrights and things like that. And so that's why Carrie's already started looking into who can assist us with that. By all means, don't think we've made a selection. I want to be very careful with that with her presentation, because there's some names in there. But these are people we've been talking to try to learn, and thank you, Jim, for helping out in this, is trying to learn what we don't know so we ask the right questions. So if nobody has any questions on the timeline, I'll do this not in a PowerPoint, but probably just a chart of dates on the website. Chuck?
Yeah, are we going to include in the timeline an implementation date for the new logo?
Oh, I will add that on here. We're going to implement it for the 24-25 school year. Okay. Let me write that down, because you're right, I didn't have that in here, so I love the feedback. And so that would be July 1st, 2024. That is our goal. If something gets in the way, you know, that's why we have 2 years to do this by state regulations. We have that timeline built in here, but I don't see a reason of waiting. Let's get it done, and part of the reason we hit the date is so people can come in here and work in the summer on the floors and get that done. Does anyone else have any questions on what I just presented? If not, you can switch over to Carrie's presentation.
Just one question.
Yeah.
When will the committee members know when the first committee meeting is and that they're on it?
We're going to get that out probably within, I want to get this out one more time to see if there's committee members. I'm going to sit with Nora, I would say by the second week in September. And again, that's just an orientation meeting for the committee meetings. The other dates are in here is where we would select of where in that calendar we would be picking them. And depending on the number of submissions, it might take 2 days.
Okay.
It could take 3 days. There's only so many hours you can look at suggestions, but we'll take those in and try to categorize them ahead of time. Anything else? If not, Carrie, it's all yours. She'll need a mic.
Thank you. Am I good?
You're good.
Good spot to stand?
Yes, because the only thing they're seeing at home actually is a presentation, correct? Yep, I
Okay.
got the thumbs up on that.
Okay. So I will get to some of the background work we're doing with the logo change, the mascot change, and how that impacts athletics here at Iroquois. But I thought it would be interesting to start first with kind of a year in review. We're approaching the 1-year mark of having our new facility across the street. And it's been a evolutionary kind of process with managing all the things that have to go with getting all of our teams over there. And also, when we initially were kind of doing a media push for this before we put in the facility, we were talking a lot about it being a community facility, and that we really wanted our phys ed classes. We wanted it to be more than just an athletic facility, and we wanted our community groups, but also our school groups to get out there and use it as much as possible. So with that, I thought it would be interesting also to give you guys a little bit of the behind the scenes. So I'm kind of mesh those two things together. So back in the fall of 2022, the facility opened in October, right before our homecoming weekend, which was perfect. And we were able to get all of our varsity coaches together and really come up with a good plan for how the games and the usage of the turf was going to look from that point on. There was a lot of scheduling changes that happened at that point, but we were able to put every single varsity game on the turf, and then we got every modified and JV team at least one game as well. So I feel like that was a pretty good feat considering we had a short amount of time with it in the fall. The coaches also helped to come up with some of these ideas, and because we had limited time, what were the practices going to look like out there? That was one thing that the coaches agreed on, but it wasn't right away. It was after we had a few weeks out there when we realized we can put 2 teams out there all the time. It just doesn't need to be 1 team. So we were able to get to a situation where the turf is always shared. We had a good practice schedule going. We kind of agreed, like, if you have a game on Wednesday, you're on the turf on Tuesday, and it worked really well. And we were able to get our JV and modified teams out there, and the coaches agreed also that we thought it was very important for the hype of what's to come for our varsity kiddos and our athletes at Iroquois to give our JV and modified kids an experience out there. So we felt that was important, and I feel like we did a pretty good job in making that happen. In addition to athletics, we ended up getting at least 1 school event out there in the fall, which was our Powder Puff event during homecoming week. We cleared the night, no other events going on, and it was a great event for the school. And then we
also had senior night out there too, didn't we? Sunset.
But
yeah,
that was later in my presentation.
Should keep my mouth shut. I should learn that by now. I haven't. I won't.
And I'm sure many of you were present at our grand opening and some of our ribbon cuttings that we did for every single one of our teams as well throughout the school year. In addition, maybe some of the things you guys didn't see, we were able to start allowing some of our community groups to utilize the facility as well, and they were coming in on weekends. I think we hosted 1 full day of EMW football down there, and that has evolved throughout the year, where now we're doing EMW baseball, EMW softball even, and also EMW lacrosse, and even some other organizations too that aren't necessarily EMW teams. So in the spring, when we got all the coaches together, it was a little bit different because we don't have nearly as many sports in the spring, and we also have the track. We have the track team that needs to utilize the facility in the spring. So the plan in the spring definitely changed, and there were some adjustments that we made from the fall to the spring. We were able to get more than just 1 JV and varsity game on there because we had more time to get everybody out there. And the practices, we were able to get both varsity boys and girls lacrosse out there every day for practice plus track at the same time. And that is because we were able to put the netting up that circled completely around to the 20-yard mark, which made it safe for our track kiddos to be out there. So we really didn't have to alternate usage on the facility in the spring, which was very, very helpful. And we were even able to get some of our JV and mod teams out there for practices as well. And again, that was an effort on part of all of our coaches. We sat together, we came up with this plan. Shift to the summer. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a bunch of things there.
Senior sunset.
Senior sunset crap. One thing that I noticed our coaches really bringing up a lot is just the ability to get outside much sooner. I really don't think our teams use the gyms nearly as much, especially our varsity teams. Our modified and JV kids were in the gyms a little bit more, but varsity was outside in the snow, all the things. So that is a huge benefit to the facility. We had, once it came time for playoff season, both our softball and baseball teams managed to get out there in the postseason for practices, so it benefited them as well. And you really started to see our PE classes pick up there in the spring, and additional school events, including the senior sunset.
And the one thing I do want to remind people, so if you're watching at home or you're watching this later taped, do not shovel the track. Do not shovel the turf. The shovel going across it wrecks the surface of both of those facilities. It will melt very, very quickly. So we had some people that tried to help by doing that. Appreciate the try, but please don't do that.
And just the senior sunset was really a great event. Normally, they told us, the PTA, that they had like 30 to 40%. They had like 88% of the students were there. The parents were there. They had a bounce house on the field. There was the seniors had a video running on the scoreboard of all events, of pictures of them since like kindergarten, and there's an ice cream truck. So it really was a large amount of people there outside athletics getting to use it and see it, and everyone, the parents and everyone thought that was a really cool event and a good use of the facility.
Everybody was talking about it.
That's another thing that I didn't even put up there, but the scoreboard and the versatility of using the scoreboard for unique situations, and even our coaches jumping on that and kind of being creative and doing some of their own things evolved throughout the school year as well. So when we shifted to the summer, the turf that facility over there was being used nonstop. That was my first real situation where I was like, whoa, I got to get a calendar together, because it became our outside groups wanting to get out there, summer camps, open gyms with our own athletic facility or athletic teams. So now I've got a pretty good calendar going for our outside groups, which is separate from our school teams, and I'm working on getting that posted to our website. Not quite yet, because I've had some issues with sharing the calendar and editing, but once it's for sure accurate, I'll make sure it gets up there on the website.
Do we charge the outside groups for field usage?
Yeah, that was another work in progress that we had sat down and met about and came up with a whole, especially, we had a group this summer that was just, was not related to EMW in any way, or shape or form, and John and I worked together to come up with a plan to hourly rate and all the services that they would need, like if buildings and grounds was going to get involved or anything like that. So,
And when outside groups use it, is there like a supervisor that oversees their use of the facility, or just a
well,
point person?
I haven't had an outside group that's used anything but the turf, and if we also agreed that if they needed to use the scoreboard or any of the electronics or anything like that, they had to use a district person to run the scoreboard. So, and in those cases, we charge them for that as well.
Well, when outside groups rent any facility, there's one contact person that is responsible, and that group has to have insurance rider so that we transfer our risk onto them.
So the summer was busy, and it was nice to see, and like if we go full circle back to what we intended the facility to be, I feel like the summer was kind of all encompassing for that. And then it brings us to the fall, and now we have met with the coaches. It's changed even a little bit more. I'll share with you on the next slide, but we have over 50 games scheduled on the turf this fall. We've included unified bocce. It's something new that we brought to Iroquois last school year, and their games will also be over on the turf. So that north end extra chunk of turf that we put out there that we thought would be very useful for some groups, that's going to be their area. So we'll be able to have our team still sharing the turf like every other day, and then a third group out there on some days too. So and then this is how the turf schedule has kind of changed and evolved over time to a point where it's very collaborative. I shifted to later in the fall because it included some of our outside groups and also unified bocce on there. So if you see a G, that's a game. If you see a P, that's a practice. Coaches are able to go on here and edit. So I initially went on there and scheduled all the practices and games, of course. And then coaches, if I put them on a Saturday and they didn't want to practice that Saturday, they can go in and take it off. If there's a time out there, the turf's not being used, a team can choose to practice a different time and just select write in there what time. And all the coaches have access to this document. They can edit it and change it. And everybody's kind of on the same page with what's going on. So that's brand new for this fall. Before I jump into the mascot logo change, any questions?
And I know we were looking, when Carrie was hired, we knew that this would be a large undertaking, the scheduling of it, because there's always going to be conflicts of when people think they should be on there or should they be on there before another team. And I want to say, Carrie, you look very good for all the bruises of working through all this. So thank you very much for doing this and getting together. And especially what I like is our coaches, if you heard her consistently, are working together. Right from the beginning of designing the facility to this, they have worked together and continue to work together. And thank you for that leadership with that.
Sure. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I wanted to shift into how the rebranding of our new logo, new mascot is going to impact athletics. And I was able to kind of narrow this down to 5 categories that I felt like are all encompassing for us. One is uniforms. Uniforms will probably be one of the bigger undertakings. Just any uniform that I usually replace, it takes time. It takes a lot of time, the back and forth of approving designs and colors and logos and all of that stuff, and making sure that it's, because certain uniforms can't have stripes on them and certain have to be also. That process is time consuming, and of course financially can be expensive too. So that's one of the big ones. Gyms.
Just to jump in real quick, as you see $4,000, it seems small. But when you do 56 times 4,000, it's about $250,000. Just to make sure everyone has that number, just for uniforms.
And just so everybody's aware where I came up with that number, we have teams that could be expensive, as expensive as $6,000 for home and away, top, bottom, all the things. We also have teams that can be as cheap as $2,000 and sometimes less. I will say this year, the school year we're currently in, and the end of last year, any uniforms that we replaced, we were able to, we'd taken, the current logo off and just sticking with the I or Iroquois. So there will be a number that we won't have to replace this time around, or when the big chunk of them comes. So, but that's just a general idea, and that's just an average that I came up with based on the high and the low.
Just out of curiosity, since there was kind of a plan like that so that we don't have to replace them all in the same year, how long will it be before those teams then catch up and actually have the new logo on their uniform?
So I suppose that depends on how many I'm able to replace financially, right, and how quickly that will go. I think if we're going to keep an eye as part of one of our, I'll talk about like branding. If we're going to keep the eye, then maybe that'll be okay for quite some time. And maybe I've seen some schools that just stick to the school name and don't really put a ton of logos on their uniforms, so I think that probably had to be another collaborative decision on how we want things to look and whether or not we'll need to, quickly or not. Is that a good answer?
It's a great answer.
Okay. Gyms, obviously our floors, we have banners, we have chairs, we have our scoreboard, some of our scoreboards have a logo in the middle of them, and then another big one is our wrestling mats. So those are kind of things within our gyms that I know, in the pool and things like that, I know that we're gonna have to look to replace.
And for the banners that are up there from the 50s and 60s, what are we doing with those?
I don't think that decision's been made. I want to be careful with how much stuff is put out places. One thing that I was approached by, and I think it would be okay, is the Historical Society would like to have, or a member of the Historical Society would like to have, and said he would pay for replacing the high school gymnasium floor if they could have, the Native American figurehead out of that. And looking at the rules, I don't see any problem with that, because the rules from the state say like trophies and stuff of a historical could remain. You just couldn't have the banners because you'd be adding new names to them. And so therefore, the Historical Society taking over that or other aspects, and they said they'd pay to replace the floor, so that would reduce the cost to the district. It would be an appropriate facility that's history.
For the floor, not the banner.
For the floor, yeah, for the floor. But the banners, no one's approached me on that, and that's just something we're gonna have to see and explore. And could someone edit it? Well, depending on the logo we stand up for, is it something they could take the current banner and put a patch over it, because I think they're vinyl, if I remember correctly. So could they sew something with the vinyl right over the one we already have up there, then we could still use it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my question was, is there anyone on the board who objects to me working with a historical society or anything in that manner? Okay, thank you.
Apparel is the third category you see up there, and that's mostly like our coaches, what they've the closet that they've, built up over time, but also team shops. And, a lot of you know that some of our teams will create their own team shops, and I think that's how our current situation has gotten a little, we have a ton of different logos and things that people use. So that's something that we're gonna have to narrow down and make sure, everybody's doing the same thing. Media, this is stuff that financially shouldn't be ton, but, our website, the scoreboard across the street, when we got the scoreboard, it came with preloaded digital images, some with our old mascot, our current mascot, but the one will be changing. So we will likely have to pay to replace some of those. And I've already kind of begun some communication with that company to see what that would entail. And if we can buy our own software to create our own graphics over time is something I'm looking into as well. And then ownership. This is like some of the extras, right? And this is something that I was looking, and this will tie into our next slide as well. Last school year, before the state came out with this mandate, I was already looking to kind of spruce things up a little bit and some ideas for taking ownership for our logo and, really kind of amping up the look of our facilities. So that includes vinyl graphics outside on some of the fences, windscreens, banners that can go outside, and also dugout wraps. So that might be the extra category of things that we want to, take ownership of our new logo and really kind of make our facilities look nice.
And if you look at the baseball dugout for the varsity team down below, you can see where the current Native American male figurehead is on that. But even before this came out from the state, Carrie had the foresight to actually have it designed in such a way that could be changed if ever needed to be changed. So
That is true.
it was worth, I think we had to pay a little extra for it, but not, it wasn't thousands, it was just a little bit.
Yeah, we paid a little extra.
And it's paying off in dividends right now.
Yep. Paid a little extra so that the vinyl piece could be just replaced easily and the metal framing would stay. So, okay, next slide, please. Oh, you skipped one. Oh, there we go. Okay. This slide takes us into What I kind of started looking at last year with narrowing down a graphic or a logo that we were going to use more regularly, and I apologize, that's relatively small for people to see, but Clarence was nice enough to share theirs with us. They had recently used a company, and this is just as an example, but you can see they've got 3 different graphics that their school can use. They've got colors identified, and they also have font identified. And then on the right side there, this was just done last school year. Our league that our sports teams plays in is ECIC, and they also use this very same company to rebrand their logo, and you can see their same thing. They've got the logo, the colors, those you can't really see, but there's official colors listed there with codes, and then the font is down there. And then if you see on the right-hand side, that's just how all the different sports of the ECIC League would look if they were, for the championships. So this company is somebody that will create a branding guide for you. They'll give you however many logo designs you want, the color, the font, and they also will give you a vector file. And for those of you who don't know what that is basically a file that you get that you can use with other companies to put your logo or graphic on anything you wish. So this is what I had kind of been already looking into, and this is a company that can provide this service. Okay, next slide. So in thinking about it a little bit more in depth, a company called BSN is one that we already work with quite a bit, actually. They are partners with both Varsity and Herff Jones. So if you don't know Varsity, that's a company very specific to cheer. They do uniform stuff like that. Our cheer program here works with them very closely. Herff Jones is like our yearbook, caps and gowns, things like that. And we also are part in athletics of their 360 rewards program, which means after you spend so much money with their company, you do get rebates that you can use on whatever you choose to use on. So the reason that we had met with this company to kind of go over some of these things and some of these options is because we are already partnered with them in multiple ways. So I'm just going to give you some of the things they've shared with us that could be cost-effective options. This doesn't mean we're going with this company. It doesn't mean that this is the one that's chosen. It's just the one we have the most information from right now. So they offer the brand development, which is the branding guide you saw on the previous slide. According to them, the price tag is $20,000. So that's included because we already partner with them in Varsity, Herff Jones, and our 360 Rewards program. So that's something to keep in mind. The uniforms, they offer all the brands you can imagine, but they have certain ones like Under Armour and their own BSN brand that have a really quick turnaround. So that's something to be mindful of when we're looking for a quick replacement here, is that it's like 3 weeks out. When I order anything from them, it's usually a 3-week turnaround. I don't know exactly what that would be in a larger quantities, but it's quick. So that's something to keep in mind. If you use that, like if you choose to do all BSN or all Under Armour, every single uniform from one company, then a specific company like Under Armour would also give you rebates. And then those rebates you could spend on anything you wanted, like apparel for your coaches or apparel for staff members or anything really that you choose to use that on. Team apparel store is something we brought up a couple times. They will basically create shops for you, and they're password protected, so you can only use the logos that our branding guide that have been approved through our branding guide. And you just go into that. We could have every single team could have their own shop. You would go in, you would click the logo that you want, the items that you want in your shop, and then you just kind of cut and paste the logos onto there. So that would be a very streamlined process for us to keep all of our teams and boosters and everything using what's approved. I already talked about our 360 program, but just so you have a little more information about that, that's something we're currently in now. And depending on how much money you spend with them, we do get rebates. And oftentimes I use that money for like a modified uniform or something like that. So that already is benefiting our school and would continue to and probably help us out with some things. Those rewards, I found out when meeting with them, can also be used for, the ownership I was talking about, windscreens, vinyl wraps, whatever you want. So they are a company that does way more than just uniforms. When I asked questions, I'm like, well, obviously you guys aren't somebody that does gym floors. And they were like, no, we do gym floors too. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that was something that they can do, but they seem to be an all-encompassing, and then they give you rebates so that can help financially. The next one is they offer, we asked about some of the banners in the gyms and some of the extras. Like I mentioned, they do all of that stuff as well. And they will, because I wanted to know if we didn't want to use BSN for something. Like let's say we wanted to go with another company to come in and do our gym floor, just because they specialize in that. They will give us ownership to our own vector files that we can use for anything. So that's part of the program. So next steps then would to be researching some other companies that do similar things and trying to compare and contrast what would be best. But these were things I thought would be important to present to you as stakeholders in all of this, and knowing kind of what the whole picture would be in terms of athletics and how we would get that all done, at a cost-effective rate.
Now, another reason I want to get to this board is because you can see why Carrie's exploring this already right now. When we're ready to go, they have to go, and even some of the research along the way for copyrights, depending on what is selected, we have to make sure that's appropriate. So partnering with someone at an appropriate cost and following all the purchasing policies, which is bidding, that takes time. So we have to be prepared as we move through, because you can see the simple timeline I put forward, just the selection, but there's more than just a simple selection of the logistics within the process. And I want to make sure the board was aware of that. Where Carrie's going, Jim's been very helpful with that too. And I think this is important to keep going down this path, to have things in place when we're ready.
And one of the things, when Karen and I were talking, BSN or company like BSN has switched over other schools already, part of their mascot switch, and they provide a team to carry who will come in and do this. I mean, when we were in the meeting, BSN's like, if you want to walk the entire district with, Doug and Carrie to try to put all this stuff together. Basically, their line was, turn your school upside down, every single thing we do. So that was a big part of it. The other thing is that when Doug first started, talking about a unified mascot and the students wanted one mascot, I was trying to get my mind wrapped around it because, representing football, we have new mascots every single year. We put out more mascots than anyone else.
Well, thank you.
In the district. Well, and then when I was, because St. John Fisher, my son goes, is a BSN school. But when you walk in there, they want it to be Cardinal Nation. So when we were, doing something there, so you saw, he was being dropped off, the wrestlers were there, the field hockey team was there. Everything was the same, and it looked really sharp, because they want you in Cardinal Nation. That's what they want it to look like. That's how it looks like. So they're using the same font. It may say, St. John Fisher field hockey, but it's the same logo, it's the same font, it's the same as the football team, to get that unified, and it does look really, really sharp. And I just, when Carrie and I talked, and Carrie was leading this, to get ahead of this, because, Doug said, picking a mascot that's fun, doing all this is really cool, and it's going to be a lot of fun, but the nuts and bolts behind it are much more complicated, and there's no way that, like Carrie or Secretary and Doug would do all this by themselves. Someone, a team that would give us, cost breaks and all this stuff was what we were looking for. So we didn't want to get to March and be like, oh, what do we do now? Carrie wanted to be ahead of that, which is very, helpful.
And we have a relationship with them already, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means we,
Basically, my understanding is that we would We would seek out one of these companies, whether it's BSN or somebody else.
I think they're one of the shade up there
Primarily
with
for the technical aspect of it. What is the cost for BSN?
The cost to rebrand is free. They're
But
putting,
what's the catch? Because I could say, BSN, come on in, help us rebrand, thanks.
You're gonna buy,
Give us the vector file.
You have to buy all the.
they're gonna want us to buy the uniforms from them.
So you'll be locked in.
So you're making a commitment.
Yeah, you're making it.
So that's something that needs to be
Yeah.
analyzed along
You're
with
not signing a
whatever-
contract.
Whatever other company, comes. And as long as you have the vector file, it really doesn't matter what company you're going with. I mean, it's gonna be the same. You got your color charts, you
Yep.
got your numbers, boom, color 23 blue is the same in this company as at that company, so, it gives you some.
And
Yeah,
that's what,
and that's the big thing, I think, right now, because, was it VPN up on the
VSP.
VSP was the other one that was up there earlier of looking, what are the difference between the two? What is the turnaround time on uniforms? Like, we obviously don't have to turn all the uniforms around right away because you have a fall sport, a winter sport, and a season, and a spring season. So therefore, they have different timelines for them. But if I think March was where we're done, we need to have something going for August. Things delivered by August for the fall sports.
Does VSP provide do they provide uniforms?
They don't. I was using them as an example because they do the branding guide, and they also offer the branding guide for free if you do certain projects with them, it was a discounted rate back when we were looking at having them do the vinyl wrap down on the dugout. They were gonna offer that to us for a very, very, very minimal cost. But they don't do that. So there would be a level of us having to explore and research other companies that are all encompassing like this. Or I just think that if we use VSP as somebody that does our branding for us, then we're looking at multiple companies to partner with for uniform, all the different things, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe AdPro might provide a service similar to BSN.
Yeah, I think so.
There might be some other companies, but, again, this was just a conversation because we already partner with them, so we really have to continue to do some more research.
And you don't know what you don't know till you learn it. So I think they're a great group to really open your eyes of what questions you need to be asking other people. Where's the cost effectiveness in there? Where's the return on the investment? And we have the laws, we have to go with the bidding or state contract that we have to follow, too.
When you say we already partner with them, are we already purchasing uniforms through this company?
Yeah, a lot of them, yes.
So, I mean, in that regard, the money that we're gonna spend, this company is always the company you go to, and we get these rebates already. So basically, it's like stick with the company we're using, and they're gonna give us this free branding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, can I ask you, what's the reason that we use BSN? Is it the turnaround time or is it the cost or both?
We don't just use BSN. Like the football team orders from Rydell. Sometimes when our lacrosse team wants a specialized type of uniform, we'll go from outside. But we did hook on with the 360 program because of the rewards. And we thought that it would help extend our budget on uniforms.
One thing, speaking of the 360 rewards and the rebate, it's you get the 6% rebate if your purchases total $100,000 or more. Is that over the course of a year, or is that a one-time?
I think that's over the course of the year, and that's also the highest return. There's lower ones, like if you spend $25,000, you get 2% or 3%. I just put that one because I was assuming maybe we'd be over that number.
Well, I mean, theoretically, we could be spending that in, one shot.
and the other
I
thing,
hope not, but.
Yeah, thank you, John.
and the other thing was, and actually Carrie brought it out, if you did that, you got those rebates, we could get the coaches their shirts, it wouldn't cost the district anything to get them their coaches shirts and all that, and a lot of them were, I have years of Chiefs, now I have to buy something all new. Well, that's, besides there's windscreens and different stuff, we could get the coaches their uniforms without actually paying for them.
Go ahead, Keith.
Something quick, what is our annual spend to update uniforms over the last year? Because what I noticed was it's $4,000, 56 teams, but we're spending money today. So what is our typical spend year over year?
I think so, yeah. It's 10,000
So $10,000
year.
per year, so,
We have old uniforms.
yeah. I'm aware.
Well, we pass a lot of things down.
Those cigarettes are like 40 years old.
I'm aware.
They still stretch.
Right. Okay.
But our posters help out an awful lot with uniforms as
Yeah,
well.
that and also some of the rebates help and, that's another thing that when I came here, that I tried to initiate a uniform replacement plan so that coaches just knew when it was their turn instead of everybody hounding me for new uniforms all the time. And so I'm able to really stretch it to usually like 6 or 7 teams every year.
So what's the duration between, you get a new uniform, how many years do you have to wait to get a new one?
It's long. 6 to 7.
If I use her 6 teams and do 56 divided by 6, you're talking almost 10 years.
Right.
And that's where,
And that's probably right. I mean, just from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just from
some, yeah, but
yeah. And when you might say right, it's correct in how we do it, probably not right for the students.
And just,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the other thing with the rewards program, even the stuff that like boosters, like buy from BSN, that still goes back into, so if I buy $3,000 worth of stuff, it goes back into carries.
Right, yeah. Paul, do you want to switch back to us live off the presentation, because I think this is the last page? Yeah, thank you.
I have another question. One of the things that the slide says, or I think Jim said it, that they'll walk through the entire district, floor to ceiling, and find everything that needs to be replaced. That's not just athletics, but that's everything. Are the other, that's something I'd want to see if the other companies are willing to do as well,
Sure. And
because that's important.
we also really did that. John had asked us to do that last school year. So I know the building principals have kind of done a walkthrough. I've done a walkthrough, but I can tell you things keep coming up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That we
Yeah.
didn't see or that were put away in storage, and then you're like, oh, and then it comes out for a season, and you're like, oh, that too. So
I do want to make that point that, yeah, it seems like athletics is going to be where the main change really is visible. But the fact of the matter is that this mascot and logo change is for the entire district. It's for every student, every faculty member, every staff member. It's not just about athletics. And so if we have a company that's willing to come in and help us make that change, not just with our athletics department, but with everybody, so that, I think that that's an important piece to what we need to look at in the company that's willing to help us rebrand.
yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, I'm here representing athletics, but I know that it exists throughout the halls too.
Sure.
So
And one thing I want to go back to, and I'll pick on Jim here and his son, because he said when he went into where he's going to college, it was a nation. Everyone was unified, and here what's happened over time is everyone wants their individual identity, which by having individual identity fractures groups. And so therefore, if we're talking about being unified, we're talking about having kids that have identity with district, identity with schools, identity with each other, which gets back to social emotional and having value of where they are. This is branding. This is becoming an identity in itself for everyone, and rather than having, I'm on this, I do this, it's, we are on this.
And to Doug's point and Jane's point, whether it's BSN or another company, if the company does it right, they could do what the music does, what the campus bookstore does. It's that brand consistent all the way through. So it's, so you are, yeah, you may be in drama, you may be in football, but we're still one, and we're represented, and we kind of at least look the same. You don't look and say, that's that, it's Iroquois.
Yeah, there's no doubt you're in the Iroquois community.
Yep.
So, never mind. It went in and.
Is there any other questions for Carrie? If not, I wish to thank her very much for coming in and working through with this. Maybe we keep Jim as the representative from the board on this, since they've been working together, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
To throw that out there, because I'd rather him do it than me. No, I'm just teasing. I got Carrie to do it for the
Any idea
district.
when the board would need to take is there an action that the board needs to actually take, like adopting this company for our branding, and when we would do that?
Not at this point, because she's still looking into it and they're deciding. But when we go, and technically it would be if there's any contract or if there's any purchases going in there, that's when we would probably do it. And I don't think we need to do a sole source, because in their document, they say you could go and if I remember right, you could go and use other groups. And that would be something important to find in anyone. I don't think we'd want to get locked into a sole source with any company for uniforms. We want that, we want to own our identity. We want to own the color. We want to own the logo of what it is, you know, the shapes.
And just because BSN may be great now, 6 years from now, you want the flexibility to change.
Yep.
I guess my question was that we're going to have to make these decisions. You're saying you want us to be ready to run in March when the final decisions are made. In order to do that, you would have to have the agreements with some company, whichever
Yeah.
company it ends up being. When can we expect to see stuff coming through as a board? Are you thinking that would happen in January, February?
I don't know. I have not had that conversation with
Okay.
Carrie yet, which is why I think it's great we have a board member on it, because now
Yeah.
we have a liaison
Okay.
directly from the board. John obviously will have to be involved because it's purchasing. So I don't know if you say no to what I said or no to someone else. John would be involved in
Cross-table conversation.
I eat my stuff. No, so John would be involved. Yeah. Baseball. So that's where I don't think
Okay.
it'll be September. Probably not September, October, probably more like November, I would think, of when it is.
More closer to winter.
Yeah,
At
more
the
towards the
earliest.
winter. Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
it's anything turn around like
All right.
within a month. That wasn't the intention of this. The intention was the board to know the immense project that we have to undertake to do this.
Just a lot of nuts and bolts behind it.
And then I guess my last thought question would be for John. We're getting numbers here that are dramatically different as we're moving forward and thinking about our budgets for the next few years. I know that we had talked about this in the past, that this change was going to be expensive and that you were budgeting for that. Is this the number you were thinking, and are we in a good position? I'm afraid, like, are we in a good position to be able to, meet our obligation with the state for changing our mascot?
Yeah, because you are spreading it on 2 years too, because you have this year's budget, but then you have in July 1st, a new budget is open. So we'll have the budget next year, will address some of the things that need to be changed by September of '24. So we really have 2 years to work with, and we'll do what we can to make it as many changes as we can.
And we might even get a third year out of it because of the foresight of buying uniforms that are right now. So there are things that are acceptable in moving forward.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of foresight with some people in here, so thank you for doing that.
Right.
The varsity team, their jerseys are new every year, so no, there's nothing in the varsity team. The pants do, but
Yeah.
but just getting a solid color pants would not be, super expensive.
No.
Yeah, I think that's the case in some cases too as well, Gary, but where the entire uniform doesn't replace, just one item of the uniform, maybe the shorts have to be replaced because it's got a logo on it. So,
Okay.
I know
I'm going to put it at your house. I don't.
and there's a lot of people to working.
Seriously, that'll be something that we're going to have to, really, we shouldn't be selling things that we shouldn't be dealing. I know there's an idea to work with Native Americans. Would they want any ownership of that? So I'll have to reach out to them, see if they would want to, be part of any of this change of retiring or anything like that.
And there's a lot of people, the cheerleaders, for example, their coaches are looking at the new skirts they got, what it was going to take to it's like embroidery, if they take the chief head off it and replace it with something, those uniforms are perfectly fine. So there's a lot of people, trying to get ahead of this too, which I think is commendable. Carrie's leading it, and people are really trying to get ahead of it to, save us money.
All right. Thank you so much for putting that together. Great job. We're going to switch to instructional programs, summer professional development. So, Dr. Dudek.
I just want to give a brief overview of an extremely busy summer. When we started in June, there were about 700 actual seats for all of the professional development. We filled approximately, more than half of those for a total of 3,000 professional learning hours over the summer, and then an additional 600 hours in curriculum work. Some of the consultants that we were lucky enough to bring in to work with us were from the University of Florida, Kentucky, Oswego, Syracuse, New York City, and the University of Buffalo. Our concentration for learning this year was on learning how best to teach our students how to read using the research from the science of reading. And that's where the Reading League out of Syracuse helped us a great deal, and the University of Florida helped us as well. We also have completed, both the administrators and the student support team, a lot of hours in trauma-informed care and restorative justice and restorative circles through the Erie County Justice system, restorative justice system. And that trauma-informed care and the restorative justice will continue on through the year. During staff days at the secondary level, our faculty will receive training in trauma-informed care to help not only our students, but help each other in our district. Additionally, the Reading League will be back on every staff day this year, and also will continue on in the summer. What I want to do is take a moment to thank all of you for your continued support. Additionally, I want to thank John for helping us get all the grant money set up, because it's really due to the grant money that we were able to offer so many great opportunities. And finally, I want to thank the administrators and the faculty members who participated. It was heavy-duty lifting, learning, but it was exciting, and we had fun. And someday I'm going to make a T-shirt that says PD 2020, whatever the year is, and it'll be like a concert T-shirt that will have all of the PD listed, because there are teachers who came to every single thing, and it was wonderful to see.
Thank you so much. Strategic plan, just to keep the community involved. I know we talked about some of these things, and when we're going to have discussions on throughout the year here, is with communication, technology is going to be working on getting that app up and running. That will be something we're going to accomplish this year. Mary Jo, did you want to say anything more about the app? She oversees technology. We've been reviewing different schools and so on, so go ahead.
I know that Deb Metz has been working with Kenny on this, and so we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, so we'll be able to hopefully get moving on it and take care of it.
And one of the goals I've had for years, and I saw some other schools had it, was presented, and with this app, it won't be on our website, but it would be on the app, where if I go to the doctor's office, I have to make an appointment for my children, or I have a quick spot where I can see what events are going on at school. The apps that we've been looking at do that, where I can mark the schools I want, and when I open it up, they stay there. I don't have to re-plug them in, which is the one thing that we've been looking for. Saw that at another school, so we're using that as a leap jumping board into this. So I'm looking forward to that myself.
Correct. As a parent, if you wanted to have the district calendar and, say, a particular building's calendar, but then your child is also in a sport, you would be able to choose those calendars and have only that information show up.
The other piece that we talked about at committee, and we're going to have this, is John led a facilities group. In the facilities group, they came up with 3 key major aspects of where they think the district should look at. One was an auditorium, and the other was transportation, the other was what can we do with space for the primaries. The recommendation that came from the committee was a decade ago, and at that time, I still say it was the right time financially and for the students to move the 4th grade to the primaries, but now there's a game changer. Universal pre-kindergarten, we have students that are 4 years old that are coming to the district for classes, and the state is looking to expand that. Where are we going to put them? And in my opinion, the committee's opinion, they were saying, and more importantly, the committee's and mine even, is they should be at the primary buildings, and with having them at the primary buildings, you just run out of room. They don't fit. So do you do additions there, which will cost millions of dollars, or can they go into the middle school because of the 4th grade leaving there, the 4th grade could come back. And with that, the space was all pretty well full, but with enrollment reductions over this last decade, that spacing has changed because it was crowded before. Now it's not, and there is room. So the recommendation came from the committee that was presented to the board at the district planning conference is to have the 4th grade move back. And I know some parents will be like, it'll go through the first time. Will my children be okay on the bus with older classmen? Will this happen? Will this happen? The great thing is we did this for well over a decade. So we know what happens there. We know that everyone was safe. We know that there weren't problems any more than there are now. There was no change in that. Maybe the 4th graders might keep the seniors awake on the way to school if they're in the back of the bus sleeping. I doubt it. But it worked before, and so that's where at the district planning conference, the board said we want to start having these conversations here around facilities. This is something definitely we want to get out to the community, when would be the right year to change it. Currently, we have 3 universal pre-kindergarten UPK buildings. They're all housed at Marilla, which is great. They're all becoming uniform there in the practice. Well, we have 3 primaries and we have 3 classes, so mathematically, putting 1 in each building would be very easy. It's just a matter of making sure there's space. Right now with the 4th grade there, they have different requirements than the UPK program. So therefore, it would actually help out because there are some problems. I shouldn't say problems. There are some efficiencies that would happen because we're able to work through them and provide a great education. But like music is there on Monday, art is there on Tuesday, they share a room. That's fine. They're not in at the same time. But it's kind of hard to have the space, to have the equipments and the art supplies and the projects out in the same room. So there's a lot of extra work that goes on, or you may not be able to do the right projects at the right time. And the teachers have to collaborate together. They're great teachers. They're doing it. Practice space, things like that, meeting space for meetings. How many classes, how many teachers for pull-out services, RTI are in a room. There are some rooms with 5 teachers in it, trying to give individualized or small group instruction. Well, small group instruction of 5, when there's 4 other teachers with 5 in there, makes it a pretty large group instruction room when you're not all on the same topic. So there are some of these things that could be improved upon like this.
I would just have to imagine that if you put the UPK like in Wales, 1 in Wales, 1 in Marilla, 1 in Alma, as you said, we're talking about 4-year-olds, it'd be closer to their homes.
Oh, it definitely would be.
And especially with, the kids that young,
Yeah.
that would be a benefit too.
Yeah, and also with that, we are using a lottery system, which we'd have to look at too, because each one can have 18 students. Well, if you have 18 students at Elma and 18 students at Wales and 18 students at Marilla, should they just be students that would be going to that building in the future? Or would it be we open up the whole district and then we put the ones we can anywhere? When you look at populations of building for equity, Marilla and Wales are very close in the numbers. So having 18 from each community would be relatively equitable. 18 from Elma, well, we'd have to look at the percentages there and run them. How, because there's more students there, how much does that skew the data in that piece? And I don't know. I'd really want to look at that and have some percentages and numbers. That's what I mean about exploring this and starting the conversation now, because we want to make sure that we get it out to the community, we get feedback from the community, because if they would rather spend, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, $8 million plus to add rooms for this, or move the fourth grade, we should hear feedback from them, because they might rather spend the money. From my knowledge of the community, I think they would much rather, knowing we've done it before, move back to the way we were at this time. And why I say that is the committee had members of the community on it. They had parents there, they had members that didn't have any children, they had staff members there, and they made this recommendation after a lengthy discussion on it. John, do you want to add anything more, or did I steal everything?
What was the motivation to take the fourth graders out of the intermediate building and back to the primary at the time?
When we were looking at it, the first question we answered, well, actually, it started even before I became superintendent. The year before I became superintendent, the interim posed closing a primary building or moving the fourth grade out. Actually, the budget went through in order to keep them there, it cost another $250,000, and the voters approved that. But prices kept going up, enrollment kept going down, but the middle school was crowded. And so therefore, the 3 primary buildings said they had room, and that created an efficiency and a cost savings because we reduced certain personnel in order to get there. Ironically, coming back, how we have it structured, I think we could do it and still generate some savings. I want to run numbers with John, because where the classes are now, when you spread them out over multiple buildings, and we try to keep 24 or less students in a class, you get some ugly numbers where you might have 50 students. Well, at that building, you get 3 teachers, which have very, very small class sizes. But if you have 3 people with 50 and you divide them up here, it's better math for the number of teachers you have. So instead of 9 teachers, 9, you could get away with 8 or 7. And that's why there would be efficiency in that. Due to different programs, we've had to add some staffing, like with the code of conduct officer. So therefore, changing that into a position of, say, an assistant principal, that there wouldn't be a huge cost as the savings it was. We were able to couple clerical people. We wouldn't have to add on clerical people because they already have an office where that could be taken care of. So there are some efficiencies with that we could take on.
And I was going to say, if you remember, that was years ago when I was at that meeting, we're bringing if we do this from preliminary discussions, the fourth grade would come back, but they're going to fall under the middle school.
They would
where
still,
at the time, the intermediate was a separate entity unto itself, and everything in there was separate from all its support structure and all that. That cost would not come back.
And I know people are going to say, well, let's call it intermediate again. Let's call it intermediate again. I don't think that's a wise decision. And why I don't think that's a wise decision, what's in a name? It gives them an identity. Well, again, we talk about having identity unity, but there's been multiple studies done, and Dr. Duick will correct me if I'm wrong, is when students transition from one building to the next. And I know, it's down the hall. It's like, I'm in this room today and I'm in that room tomorrow, right next door. There's a regression in learning. It has to do with identity and trying to figure out the new rooms and moving through the buildings. And that, it would alleviate that transition dip. And you would have the same thing. You wouldn't, go ahead, I can see you want to talk.
Sorry. Yeah, the fewer the transitions for the students, the better, because with each transition comes new rules, new culture. Even though we say it's the same building, it's different. And so, there's this feeling of graduating and going on to this next level, but then there comes additional anxiety with that, and the student doesn't understand that it's just down the hall. They look at it as something greater.
Doug, with bringing them back to the main campus, and knowing that we did have that additional cost back when, we decided that we would push them down. Do we know how much of a savings will garner?
We haven't started running any numbers yet because we talked about it at the district planning conference, and so the next step to me would be having it in public, well, more public where it's recorded and everything, so the public hears it's happening, making sure everyone hears that this is the,
Well, I'm just
something the
trying to
board
think of
wants
a
to go.
way to pay for the uniforms and keeping our.
I don't know if it would help, but I don't think it'd be the end all be end all. We'd have to run numbers, and that's why, to me, if it's cost neutral, it would be great, because we're taking on 3 classes and then have room for expansion for the universal pre-K. And the universal pre-K, the state is putting money towards that every single year. Does it fully take care of the program? No. But if we could implement more, and nothing against, the mascot and the uniforms, but that's a one-time cost, so you can pay for it, maybe less than reserves. But if we have this annual cost that we're able to take on and provide greater services for the people in UPK, that would be a great thing to do, or the families that would have UPK students.
And from everything we've understood, that the state's not going to slow down, UPK is going to continue to grow.
I believe it is. I believe they're going to keep putting funding towards it. I don't believe that it's mandatory yet, but the way they're talking, I can see it possibly going that way. Ironically, kindergarten is not mandatory, so if they make UPK mandatory but not kindergarten, that would be a really unique situation. But I can't speak for what the state is going to do. These are just some assumptions on my part, and that's just coming from the Commissioner of Education speak. But you get a new commissioner with new initiatives, things can change. But right now, the legislative bodies are putting money towards it. So I get, really, I look into the board that nodding, like keep moving forward this way. We can start looking at what the cost would be and things like that. Okay. Moving on to the next one, capital project. I'll make this quick. I want to make sure the public hears. The board already knows. You've seen it in my Friday messages. The II cafeteria is not being completed. It just has to do with bidding and supplies and labor shortages, but they will be eating in the gymnasium. Now, during COVID, they're eating gymnasium. They did not have tables. They were sitting on the floor. We had mats. We provided it. Some families were more or less comfortable. We are moving the tables into the gymnasium. So it's just a different room. They won't be, participating in phys ed there. They're not sitting on the floor. So it's basically the same thing, just down the hall, one door with the room, just eating in there, on tables, off the floor. So if anyone hears this, they don't go, oh my gosh, it's okay. They're cleaning it up. We do have activities that happen already in the cafeteria where the 4th and 5th graders eat after lunch is over. So there's really no change at all. Everything's clean, sanitized, and taken care of. Marilla Primary, if you go by it, the sidewalks are in. They weren't in last week, Friday, but they have poured them. I went out there and I checked. I don't know if they've done the final coating for the blacktop, but they can drive on it. There's sidewalks. It's safe for kids. They're not coming across stones. It's not really pretty yet because they still have all the site work, moving the dirt around and the grass seed and things like that, but it's all in good, safe condition.
It looked pretty good tonight.
It did it?
Yeah. I mean, they had it all graded where, the new ramp to the front doors and, where the sidewalks were, they had, I don't know if they put seed in there or,
Yeah, I don't know. And they put the hydro seed in pretty quick.
Yeah, there's still some piles of mud out where the message sign.
Yeah, and the message sign isn't in there yet, but that's okay. Kids don't go out there. And Green Hour is a company that does it, and I know they're doing the best they can. They're a great company that we really, for the last 2 years, worked well with them. And this summer, some of their subcontractors just ran into problems with the weather. Actually, we wish we had known the weather was going to be this way because we could have put seed down on some other projects we have because it was a great growing season when typically it isn't. It's just the way it goes sometimes. Safety, last year at this time I was saying the main campus, now I'm saying the district. And we had trouble with the electrical contractor at the time, actually went out of business. The new contractor, what's the name? Conley? O'Connell, they came in, they're doing fabulous, so that's why I put their name out, because they're doing a fabulous job from us. They hit the ground running. I was thinking things, going up right away, and we've run multiple tests with the system. So the whole district now has a system, new PAs, they're actually mounted on the wall, they're not hanging from hangers anymore, they're all the pieces there. And what we're going to do opening day with the teachers is actually at noon. We are going to have, by then they should be back in their buildings, we're going to have them experience what it's like. They're not going to run and hide, but they're going to be in their rooms or wherever around the building, so they can hear what it's like, be familiar with it before we show it to the students, so the teachers aren't startled by anything when the students first hear it for the first time in some of the buildings, so they're aware and cognizant of what's going on. And that way also it's a nice double check, because if they're in the rooms and there's one room not working, they can say, well, my room's not working, and we can get that going. We have gone through and we believe we've checked everything. If you've been here for training in the summer, you'll know that we have been doing work with it, and the board actually got to experience it during the district planning conference. We set it up just for your pleasure. And the agenda meeting, yes. And that was one of the times we were running lots of tests. So we got to, an hour-long agenda meeting, half hour of it was hearing the alarm go off. Let's see with that. Where we are with the project too, financially, even though prices are going up, we're running very well. And so we're looking at some phase 2 projects. Look at if we get ahead on some things, like there's some roofs in the high school that are bad. There's some parking lots that are bad. When I say bad, there's always something to fix. It's like your house, it's just there's more zeros in it. And so we're putting that together now to come to the board and say, here's what we're recommending to get done. I think some of the key aspects would be some roofs in the high school, finishing some of the parking lots out at Marilla. I'm trying to think what else was on it. Some of the driveways around here that are in bad shape on the main campus. We did discuss trying to get ahead of doing some piping for the bus garage with doing that, but some of the infrastructure out there we wouldn't have enough money to put the piping in and do the pavements and stuff. And with some of these other things and not knowing exactly where we are, we could get funding through transportation for that. So using the funding for a capital project from the state and then using the funding for transportation from the state to do that would make more sense. So we'll be coming to the board with that, making sure the board wants to entertain that. We did look at what would be the cost and would it remain cost neutral for the project. If we were to do the structure across the road, it would not. It would put us over where there is a taxpayer cost. We promised the taxpayers there would be no impact to taxes, and that's why that will not be presented to the board, because any way we cut that picture, there was an impact to the taxes because of the amount of aid, which is zero over there, which is at these other projects is a 70% aid. 70% is a huge swing with that. Any questions with that? Network outage. I'm going to go back to Dr. Dudek to talk about, unless you want me to, I'm getting tired. No, not really. She's in charge of technology and she does a great job.
So if you live in this area, you know that the power goes out from time to time. And recently we had a power outage that brought down our school district. And we typically have a generator that pops back up and then continues to run our internet and our servers. There was an issue with the switch so that it would happen and happen without any issues. And that caused an internet outage of about 2.5 days. Dave Carlin, Glenn, Ken, Matt, they've all worked really, really hard to ensure that the problem is taken care of. There will be there's going to be a power switch tomorrow around 10 a.m. and then they'll be checking out the system to make sure it's okay. But then we should be fine.
Yep. And if we aren't, they're going to fix it.
It's in the LAN room over here.
It's right. I think if you open this door, you see it.
Yeah, it's right next to
The one they've been
the
testing
Yeah.
in the morning?
Yeah.
Yep. So thank you on that. Any questions on that? The official newspaper. So we approved certain newspapers at the reorg meeting, and what do we've become aware of, because they printed in the newspaper, that the Elma Review will be actually becoming fully under the umbrella East Aurora Advertiser, which would leave us without one of our official newspapers. That's why that's in here to do it. We're really not looking to change. We're just keeping up with the business practice of the paper we've been using. Let's see, the last thing is recognitions. So Chloe, who's a fourth grade student at Elma Primary, was featured on NBC. The Today Show, this is also posted on our Facebook. It was a while ago. She's in Mr. Naparella's class, and she did her clay sculpture of her hero, which is a TV personality on that show. And so she was actually featured, and you can see her with her big eyes looking at her hero with that. So that was great. Congratulations for her. This says last Friday, so this was in July, because we don't have a lot of board meetings, but the drama camp performed The Night of Dawn, a large audience of family and friends. Phenomenal. I was actually at a conference there, so I couldn't attend. It breaks my heart not to see the drama performances, because they do so well, and right on the front is one of my students in student cabinet. So congratulations to them for what they did. The Erie County Fair has come to an end, and there are a lot of ribbons. Go to our Facebook, because there are a lot of different students that submitted work and received ribbons from there. That's all on Facebook, correct? Our Facebook? Yes. Yep, so you can go see that. Love athletics, but I also love education. And congratulations to our 22-23 teams, because Iroquois received the School of Excellence Award. To earn the School of Excellence Award, 75% of schools' varsity teams must qualify and receive scholar athlete. So then there are scholars. So not only are they athletes, but they're also scholars for the team award. And so congratulations to them for that award. And the other thing we did have here, I'm trying to see the date. I believe it was the 15th, because unfortunately I was invited to speak, but I couldn't. I was on my way to another conference. If we got to schedule these things around these conferences I have to attend. We had a naturalization ceremony. This was done, the U.S. Customs Immigration Service, along with the Daughters of the American Revolution, the League of Women Voters of Buffalo Niagara, and Mrs. McCoy's Government and Civics Summer School class did it to new citizens from different 20 countries, 36 immigrants. And, you know, they went through all the proper ways of doing this to become U.S. citizens. And I want to say they're very proud for that citizenship. So congratulations to the class for organizing this. And I'm trying to think, the Honorable Judge McCarthy, who is a graduate and Iroquois alumni, is the gentleman who presided over the ceremony. Go ahead, Mary Jo was able to attend, because she didn't go on the conference with me.
It had to be one of the best things to be in the audience to witness. And the fact that our students arranged and designed everything. And in speaking with Ms. McCoy, this is going to be part of the Seal of Civics Readiness badge. And I was telling Doug, it was very emotional, because at one point a gentleman from Africa, from an African country, I believe it was Rwanda, came up on the stage, and his chest couldn't have been out any further, because he was just so proud. But as he left the stage, he took his certificate and he kissed it. And I was like, this is something that as many people as possible should witness, because it was just that beautiful.
Thank you to Mrs. McCoy and her government students for putting that together. That's an amazing experience.
Oh, that's my report.
Thank you. All right, that leads us to recognition of guests. Are there any guests that want to be recognized? Okay. And then that brings us to our discussion of agenda items 11.01 through 24.01. I do want to point out on there that we do have somebody who is retiring, Mr. Rollier. So we want to definitely say thank you for all of his service to our district. And also to mention that 24.01 01 is not part of the consensus agenda. That's the one that names the East Aurora Advertiser as our official paper as they make that transition. That is because I work for the Advertiser and I'm going to have to abstain from that vote. So I can vote for the consensus agenda. We've pulled that and made it its own separate item. Is there any other discussion on any of the agenda items?
The tax rates are in here for the board to approve. John's going to make the comment. It's the same comment probably we make while we're presenting the taxes about how equalization rate has a great impact. So go right ahead, John, if you'd
Yeah,
like.
item 23.03 is the tax rates for the 23-24 school year. Really, the thing that the district has control over is that tax levy amount and that increase, because the voters approved that increase through the budget process in May. But there's lots of other things that influence what the actual tax rates are for the 6 different townships that form our district. And those are things that we don't have a lot of control over. So every year, some districts go down with their tax rates, some towns go up, some go down. And it's influenced by assessed values. There's 6 different assessors that do 6 different equalization rates. Some towns are equalized at 100%, meaning your assessed value is 100% of your real value or market value. And we have the other end of the spectrum where one says the assessed value represents 3% of the real market value. So, and they change those equalization rates every year, and we don't have any impact on those. But that helps, that changes the spread of how the taxes go out, because the levy that we set, that's fixed, is spread based on full value of property. So those rates have a big impact on how that money is spread and dispersed. This year, Marilla is seeing an actual increase in the tax rate of 4.2, where the other townships, a couple are fairly flat, and some are seeing an actual decrease in the rate. Doesn't mean they're not going to pay taxes or have an increase in their taxes, but their actual rate is actually going down in some spots. We do see that now every couple of years. There's usually 1 or 2 townships that show a larger than levy. Our levy increase was 2.84%. There's usually a town or 2 that show a bigger increase on their tax rate, but there's others that are much less than tax levy increase. So this year it's Marilla, but to support what I just said, if you look back last year, Marilla actually had a 1.77% decrease in their tax rate. So if you take those 2 and together, it's about a 2.4 increase over 2 years. So that's kind of what happens. And again, we don't have a lot of influence on how those rates are determined. We just have our tax levy that's set, and we get that same tax levy no matter what the rates change to.
And we ought to make sure, the board's aware of this, so if you're stopped anywhere and asked this question, you can say, John talked about it, give him a call.
They can, yeah.
Because I'd like to say it's easy to explain, but it's not, and, there's a piece of pie that was voted on, and we believe it should be just, equitably distributed, but we don't get to control of what equitable is. The state does, and they divide up who pays how much, who gets so much of that pie. I've gone personally to the state, provided different ways they could do this so we could be more accurate, so when the voting's there, they would do it. The state is not taking any of my recommendations. So, and it wouldn't be just for us, it would be for everyone across the state. You could be very accurate with what you're putting forth to the voters if they made some of these simple changes. But they're not at this point. The next thing in here John wants to talk about is the internal audit, and Jim's on that committee too.
Yeah.
I guess this is a night for Jim to talk.
I was going to say really quick, I was on the audit committee in the meeting, and it was kind of cool listening to all the different things from the teacher retirement system and 401k loans, but I guess the biggest takeaway was, for the board, that it's good to know that they're constantly looking at the district finances and constantly looking at ways to improve it, and make corrections if needed, that it's not just something that happens only when the state comes in and does it, that we self-monitor and self-correct constantly. So I just want to thank John and your team for that.
And the audit, I think everybody has a copy of the internal audit. Internal audit meaning they look at internal process that we have and make sure that we're following our own rules that we set for different things that we do. And they look at, they pick 3 or 4 different areas every year that are different, and they kind of rotate through those, and the audit committee kind of determines what areas we're going to focus on each year. We pick different ones all the time. This year, there was 4 areas. Grant procedures, are we following our procedures with grant funding, and are we submitting reports in a timely manner? Are we following all the rules that we're supposed to? And they found no issues there. Second one was retiree health insurance payments. We do have people who retire out of the district and choose to pay full price for health insurance through our district, and we allow them to do that. And they were checking the billing to make sure that those retired employees are paying the correct amounts to the district, and they found no issues with that. They did have a suggestion that we might want to use our own software, our Envision software system, to track some of those, but they said we're doing a good job as we are, and we can consider that if we'd like. Third thing is payroll deductions for health insurance. So employees that are choosing to have health insurance, by contract, they have a amount that they have to pay for health insurance, a portion of that. So they went through and did testing and verified that everybody's paying the correct amount for their health insurance, so there was no issue there. And then the fourth issue was ERS and TRS payments, employee retirement system and teacher retirement system payments, and the contribution amounts that they make, and also loan payments that are done. And there are issues with that. We've seen for years that it's timing of when they tell us to start taking loans or deductions on people. Well, our next payroll may be 2 weeks away, so it doesn't happen when they think it's happening. So there's lag time and things like that happen. They found some small amounts that we are off, and we're going to try and resolve those and try and rectify and come up with a process to reconcile those payments every month.
And John, wasn't that, not that, it's not an accounting term, but not that district anything wrong, some of the software issue to match up the dates caused some of those discrepancies, right?
Yeah, there are different things in the setup that we can address, and we'll look at even having BOCES help us to kind of make sure that our system is kind of mirroring what ERS and TRS are expecting from us as
Because
well.
how many different pay weeks and stuff like that, the software just didn't totally understand what we were trying to make it do.
Wasn't matched up completely, yeah. So other than that, those were the findings. I also attached a corrective action plan. We do submit this report to New York State for review, and we submit our corrective action plan to New York State so they can review that as well.
Questions? Thank you for serving on that committee.
Okay. Any other discussions?
Yeah, just one thing. In 2301, the district-wide safety team, in the document, it says that the Board of Education representative is TBD. So are we going to assign somebody to being on that committee?
Yeah, that's a typo. Somebody did sign up for that committee at the reorg.
Okay. I don't remember who that was.
Let's look it up, and then
Yeah,
we
okay.
can put it out
We
this
did put
Friday
it out?
memo.
Okay, all right, cool.
I'll get it out on the Friday memo to remind everyone.
For the safety committee.
And if,
Yeah, I
that
don't
way if we're
remember.
wrong, we can get someone.
We have to look in the notes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Safety committee.
Okay. Any other discussion items? Okay, then may I have a motion to approve our consensus agenda 11.01 through 23.14?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And that brings us to 24.01, where we will recommend, the superintendent recommends that the Easter Advertiser be listed as our official newspaper. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Please know that this is an and/or, so it's just like we do in the reorg. It's not, they're the only official newspaper. It's the Buffalo News and/or the Easter Advertiser and so on.
The Easter Advertiser is officially absorbing, I guess, the Elmer Review the week of September 11th. So it has to do with the changeover. The Easter Advertiser and Elmer Review are printed by the Buffalo News. The Buffalo News has moved their printing press out of state to Ohio, and it didn't make sense for the operations of the newspaper and the Neighbor to Neighbor news group that they are a part of to continue moving forward with their printing with the Buffalo News. So it's just, office things. So, and again, because I work for the newspaper, I will not be voting in this. So can I all in favor? abstains, myself. Okay. And that motion carries. That brings us to 24, recognitions of guests on any topics. Do we have any guests?
No.
Okay. Then do we need an executive session? We're good. Okay. Then can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a little bit.
But thank you to all the people.
All in favor?
Thank you to everyone that watched, and thank you to everyone that's going to watch the recording.
Motion carries.